So have you noticed the pendulum swing from years of dieting and restriction to swinging to intuitive eating and eating whatever you want, and your emotional eating still remains? So you might be asking yourself, I stopped dieting, why do I still feel so out of control? This really isn't about choosing one side or another, it's about what each side doesn't address. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And I used to emotionally eat, and I tried both methods, swinging from diet mentality to intuitive eating. And I see this in my clients, and neither of these sides really worked. So let's dive in and talk about what diet culture and dieting really is about. Diets are about having specific rules around food and restrictions. They tend to be control-based. They ignore your body's natural cues for something external to you. There's usually, this is a good food, a bad food. There is sort of morality around it. And you tend to feel shame when you fail at these diets and you spiral. So when we restrict, as a lot of diets expect us to do, that really creates stress in our nervous system in a couple of ways. We're restricting our body physiologically, physically, of calories and nutrients, and our brain needs this. And so it'll make us start thinking about food, and we'll have that food noise, that chatter in our head. And also, when we give into this food noise, we feel shame and we spiral, and then we feel more shame and we eat more food to kind of cope with the discomfort. So essentially what diets are doing is they're disconnecting you from your body's actual needs and nourishment needs, and it's also putting this layer of shame on you that you can't necessarily continue to restrict, and you can't continue to adhere to for a long period of time, because you're physically not meeting your needs. And then when you don't stick to these rules, you feel shame and you spiral, and then that pulls you out of the diet as well. So the other side that we can swing to is sort of intuitive eating. And I also find that this happens when we are so sick of diets, we're so sick of the rules, we throw everything out the window and we just eat whatever comes to our mind. And so it can feel in the beginning really freeing, because there's no real rules, there's no permission to have certain foods or not. Food is seen as more neutral. There's not like a good or bad. It doesn't talk about the benefits of food. And it feels like, oh, you're sort of taking back this control you didn't have before. You don't have to adhere to anything. But when you're an emotional eater and you start using intuitive eating that says eat when you're hungry, and you haven't done the deeper work, that can be really confusing, because as an emotional eater, you feel hunger, not just physical hunger, but emotional hunger. And if you don't know how to discern that, it's going to be really confusing. And let's say you can discern it, if you don't have a way to actually start quieting that voice, meeting those deeper needs, so you're not in emotional hunger, it's going to feel really difficult. You're going to feel like you're bracing and sort of gripping control, trying not to eat as well. So when you're trying out intuitive eating, there's still that compulsion and that urge to eat. There's no real way of really tuning into your body versus meeting your emotional hunger needs. So there's usually this swing from restriction to intuitive eating, and I see this with clients, and I went through many cycles of this. It can be so stressful, so restrictive, almost so shame-inducing to stick to a diet that you just say, forget it, and you swing back to doing whatever you want. And then you're like, I don't feel really great here. I feel out of control. I don't feel good in my body. I'm eating things. And okay, I'm going back to the diet. So you're back and forth. And none of these are actually helping you. They're actually reinforcing your emotional eating, because when you diet and control, you are telling yourself you're not good enough for following these rules. And when you're in intuitive eating and you're eating in a way that doesn't feel good and listening to every hunger cue, you feel like a failure as well, because you're not feeling good in your body. And so what these two sort of extremes miss is that we need to learn how to tune into our true nourishment needs and start healing our emotional eating. And as we do them in tandem, we're going to hear what our body needs. We're going to hear what it needs to feel good, to feel nourished. And this is something that I had to sort of piece by piece put together for myself, and now I help clients. So what I found that was missing was that I didn't have an actual way when I swung from one extreme to the other. I really didn't know what hunger, true hunger, felt like in my body. I always thought I was hungry when I was emotionally eating, and trying to control it with diets or just freely just doing whatever I wanted didn't feel good, because I wasn't making choices that helped me feel good in my body. So when I first one of my last times that I swung from the dieting and restriction to just feeling like I was intuitive eating and eating whatever I wanted, I didn't feel good, and I knew I had to find a middle way, and that was a way that nourished my body, that made me feel good with the foods I ate, that made my body feel good, and it didn't make me feel like crap, for lack of a better word. So I started to slowly connect back to my hunger, to my body's cues. I started to experiment with different ways of eating and seeing how it felt in my body. And I didn't have restrictions on the foods I ate, but I started to play around with what felt good in my body and started to learn about nutrition, not from a restrictive diet way or this is the right or wrong rule, but really taking into account how my body felt with certain foods. And so I started to do that in tandem with figuring out and seeing when I was triggered into emotional eating through emotional hunger, and starting to meet those deeper emotional needs as well. And so what I found was that as I stopped controlling food and started listening to my body and what it needed, and that is through experience. You can try it, all of the different advice out there. And what I did, because I have a background in science, I'm very, I sort of am a mad scientist, experimenting on my body, trying out different things, looking at the science and how it relates to our body's physiology, biology, how our digestion works, knowing what feels good in my body. So for example, I might eat some cupcakes or certain foods and they taste good because they're designed with a lot of sugar and carbs, and my body, on my tongue, it tastes really good. But when I eat a bunch of them, I feel really awful after, and I feel kind of sick and I feel stuffed. And so starting to notice what made my body feel good. And as I started to nourish my body, I could see that my particular body, obviously, it's kind of like that sage advice: lots of water, lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, whole foods, things that are minimally processed, things that are digesting well in our system. And that helped me to see and help my body give me more and more feedback. This feels good, this feels good, as I was resolving my emotional eating at this deeper root level. This needs to happen in tandem. And when it happens, when you start when you're able to resolve your emotional eating, because you can tell, am I truly hungry from emotionally hungry? And you work on it on that layer, then you're not confused by your cravings and urges, because when we're emotionally hungry and we're craving food, it's not really about the food, it's about deeper unmet needs, emotional needs. And then this helps us to see when we're actually hungry, when our body wants to be fed, when we are feeling hunger signals. And when I'm working with clients, foods digest at a certain rate in your body. If you eat at a certain time, we can expect in a few hours later, you're going to want to eat. And we can start playing with food, because food does interact with our body. It does tell us, we can sort of give ourselves and see our particular pattern with foods, and the foods that make us feel good and energize, and they digest and they give us vibrancy. There is a healthy relationship with these foods. And it doesn't mean you don't have the cupcake and the cake. It means that when you have them, your body is going to talk to you and tell you, I feel good after half a cupcake or a donut, or, I had too much cake and I just need to take a break. For example, for me this week is my son's birthday is coming up, and so we've had cupcakes for school, and there's going to be lots of cake and different things. And I know after I had a cupcake or two, I could feel in my body, yeah, I need to pause a bit. This doesn't feel good. I don't feel as good. Of course, when I was eating it, it was delicious, but my body was like, yeah, this is not what we normally have. It doesn't feel as good. And so we're going to kind of like need to take a bit of a break and not have it 4 days in a row. But if I wanted to, I could. But the consequence is that I won't feel my best, and my stomach won't feel, it'll kind of feel like heavy and weighted down. And I don't like that feeling. So I'm going to make a conscious choice not to have it. And so this is what happens when we start working with your emotional eating and how you truly nourish yourself beyond the diets. I'm not asking a diet, can I have a cupcake this week or every day? I don't have any rules like that. I just know what works for my body. And when I'm working with clients, we're finding out what works for their body. And we can see it in their energy levels, how they feel, how certain foods make them feel in their body, how their mood shifts. There's lots of ways to really tap into what is nourishing to you. And when we're able to do that, food becomes food, and you can make choices around it. And you are then able to meet your deeper emotional needs because you're looking at it from that level. And it's not about swinging from no rules to rules. You're going to have your own way of connecting with food that feels good to you. And you're going to be able to say no to certain foods and yes to certain foods, and be okay with the consequences. You're going to be sovereign around food. And so the moral of this story is that the food and whatever you're swinging to, it can play into your emotional eating, but it's not going to heal your emotional eating. If you diet or you intuitive eat, that's not going to heal your emotional eating. You have to heal it at a deeper level, and then your relationship with food changes because now you're connected to your body, you're connected to what you need, and you're not shaming yourself to trigger more emotional eating. And that's the thread between the two. When you shame yourself around food, that can be a trigger to your emotional eating. Here we're sort of looking at them separately, but they're interconnected. And I hope that makes a sense, because I see this with clients who said, I can never give up, my burger and my fries. I can never see a world like that going to, oh my God, I'm like craving vegetables and fruits. Who am I? As we heal their emotional eating, because now their body's true needs are speaking from a physiological level versus from an emotional level, and using food as a substitute to meet those emotional needs. So you don't need to swing from one diet to another. I would say it's really great to experiment. And what I've found through, my journey with emotional eating, being a holistic nutritionist, experimenting on my body, seeing the patterns around what works for someone, is that there is really a science to nourishing your body. And I teach this to clients inside of my program, and there is a way to move through your emotional eating. And they need to be sort of happening because there's sort of these connected layers, loosely connected layers with your emotional eating. And so if you want to get started on this journey, the first step I recommend to clients is really to learn to discern true from emotional hunger and catch your triggers. And if you want a free guide on that, I have one below. It's linked below. And if you want more support, you can find out more about my program, the Emotional Eating Evolution Program. This is a 12-week container where we move through the different layers to help you get to ease and peace and confidence around food and in your body, which include true nourishment, body acceptance, and emotional wellness. And this is a step-by-step process with weekly office hours, one-to-one sessions with me, and the deeper tools to shift this pattern. So you're not feeling like you're out of control with food and your body. You're coming back to this relationship that feels good to you while resolving your emotional eating. So those resources are below. If you have any questions about what I've shared today, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And I look forward to sharing more with you. And I hope you have a great day.